webisode of Sound Advice, we're talking about something that I think is the most important thing for all artists to define. It's the pitch. We're going to take it back down to the basics, and I want to talk about the pitch. The pitch is the most pertinent and important thing that an artist needs to hone before they go out and try to market themselves. And last week I got a call from a band, actually a hip-hop artist, and I said, so what kind of music do you make? And he said, I don't make music that sounds like anyone else, which immediately got me kind of annoyed. And I said, okay, well, what genre of music do you play? And after 5 minutes of me kind of haranguing him, I understood that he's an urban hip-hop artist, and he kind of sounds a little bit like De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest. I mean, it was pretty obvious to me what he did. And I get, for musicians and artists, it's so hard to compare yourself, to use other names. You feel really like you've created something, but let's face it, you haven't invented a new genre of music. You probably sound somewhat like someone else. And in order for people's tiny pea brains to comprehend anything, they need a context. Yeah. And unless you can pitch yourself, an elevator pitch, my dear friend Bob Baker calls it a BIS, brand identity statement. They call it lots of different things, but it's basically just, what if you have 15 seconds with Clive Davis in an elevator? Are you going to tell Clive Davis you don't sound like anyone?
All right, check this out. I definitely have something to say about this, because the way that albums appear on CD Baby is that as you're browsing and searching, whatever, you see the album cover, artist name, album title, and a one-sentence description of it. And that is it. So that one sentence is so key, it makes people curious. So I think about this a lot. So imagine if, think about it from the other person's point of view for a second, because, you know, most musicians, if you say, hey, what kind of music do you do? They say, you know, it's kind of like this, kind of like rock, jazz, soul, kind of funk, kind of classical, kind of country, kind of, you know, a little bit Dixie, kind of, you know, with the kind of like hip hop, you know, it doesn't really sound like anything. You just got to check us out. You know what? Next Thursday night, we're playing at the Bitter End at 11:30, so come check us out. Okay, so think about this from the other person's point of view for a second. Let's imagine you were standing in line at the post office, and you ran into somebody wearing a nice suit. You went, well, you look rather clean. Are you in business of some sort? And they say, well, yes, I am. And you say, well, what kind of business is it? Oh, you know, I mean, we've got this building. It's kind of like this front door. You know, it's like we have this thing. You know, our marketing director's been around for a few years. We got some stuff. You know, it's kind of profitable. But you know what? We're out on Route 17. We're open from midnight to 1 a.m. next Thursday only. So you should come check us out. It's like, the fuck, dude? Would I really, like, get in the car at midnight and drive out Route 17 to go check out a business that can't even tell me what the hell they do? Why the hell would you expect anybody to make any effort to check out your music if you haven't even told them what the hell you do? So my challenge to every musician is to come up with a few simple words that describe your sound. They don't need to, the thing is, you don't need to rationalize your existence for being on Earth. I think that's the problem, is that some musicians feel that, like, oh my God, well, I can't find a few words that describe every note of music I've ever made and am ever going to make. So they get nervous, and that's why they end up with these kind of, you know, rock, jazz, funk, classical, soul, kind of, you know, whatever statements. But instead, if you just find a few words that make people curious to hear more, then you've done your job, and shut up. Mm-hmm. So, for example, with my own band for years, I was kind of doing that, well, we don't really sound like anything. And then somebody once said, you know, you sound kind of like a cross between James Brown and the Beatles. I was like, good one, I like that. So then for years after, anytime somebody said, oh, what kind of music do you do? I said, it's a cross between James Brown and the Beatles. And you saw people go, dude, I got to hear that. Do you got a copy? And it's like, there you go, mission accomplished. And of course, not everything I did sounded like a cross between James Brown and the Beatles, but it was a few words that made people curious to hear more.
So my advice on Sound Advice is to get your pitch together, write it out, and do it soon. You can email it to me at ariel@arielpublicity.com, and I'll give you my honest feedback. This is Ariel. You're watching Sound Advice. Cheers.